And good afternoon to everyone. We have a lot of stuff we want to get to you. Let me just quickly give you an idea as to what we're going to talk about. Two key topics. I'll get to the second one in a second. Let me get to the first one right now. As an introduction, then we'll get into the topics itself. By the way, those who don't know, this is yours truly, attorney Michael Cord, aka Michael X, aka the angriest black man in America, host of TV Courtroom. And the two topics that we'll be dealing with today, one, we're calling it You Gotta Love the Children to Teach the Children. It's an ongoing monthly segment featuring rabble-rousing agitator and skillful educator Dana Carter. We're going to find out what's going on with the school district, what's going on with the superintendent leaving, what's going on with the PFT. We get to all of that shortly, but the highlight of the show from the beginning to the middle and the end is what we're dealing with in terms of what's going on here at Philly Cam. Let me start out by saying that this program is part of Philly Cam's People Power Media Fest, an annual month-long celebration of community media and Philly Cam's membership, with this year's focus on sharing the ways media can be a form of community care. For more information, you can visit ppmfest.org. That's ppmfest.org. And I'm going to be talking more about it throughout the show. One of the things that we will be talking about more extensively throughout the show is the issue of people power. In fact, let me jump into what I said in terms of two topics for today's show. I talked about you got to love the children, teach the children. We're going to get into that later in the show. But the first thing I want to talk about is what I just mentioned to you in connection with the PPM Fest. And I need to share the following with you. There's a lot of stuff out there that should be covered by the Main Street media, or I should say mainstream media, but it's not. And some people might say, well, it's just that it's not newsworthy. Well, yes, the stuff is newsworthy. And fortunately, there are public broadcasting stations like this, like Philly Cam. And by the way, I'm going to talk more about the whole Philly Cam issue, but let me start by just saying this, which is very, very important. This is October 1, and you're probably going to be watching this broadcast throughout the month and even beyond that, I hope. But October 1, and that's important because the PPM Fest starts today, October 1. In fact, it's every October for a month-long celebration of community meeting as community care with a mix of workshops, screenings, panels, free in-person and virtual events. As I said before, check out the PPM Fest website to plan the experiences that will enlighten and entertain you. And many of you know that I do a radio show with WURD 96.1 FM. It's called The Radio Courtroom. I write a weekly column for the Philadelphia Tribune, and I love doing that work there. I love spreading the cultural and political and revolutionary gospel as far as I can. And I love that radio station. I love the Tribune. But I have to admit that the focus of Philly Cam seems to be, I won't say more people oriented, but less restrictive in terms of what can be said. Now, I don't want to say that we all should be free to go around using profanity and that kind of thing, which obviously is against the FCC regulations. But we should be able to challenge those who might be corporate sponsors. And I have to give a big shout out to the radio station and to the newspaper that I write for, because they've never, I repeat, never tried to censor me. But I'm smart enough to know that I should not bite the hand that feeds me. So if there is an advertiser for a station that I work for and I want to expose them, again, the station newspaper never told me not to, but because of how the system works, it's probably not a good idea. But here at Philly Cam, that's not a problem, because what we do here is not corporate sponsored. In other words, it's designed simply to share the information, no matter who likes it. Share the information without any concern whatsoever about feeling like you're stepping on somebody's toes or that you're biting the hand that feeds you. Let me just share a little more about Philly Cam, because I really enjoy what I do here. More than a TV station, Philly Cam is a vibrant community center that connects people and teaches them to become creators, not just consumers of high quality, key phrase there, high quality, independent and non-commercial media. Any individual who lives or works in the greater Philadelphia community, regardless of race or color or religion or national origin or ability or age or gender expression or sexual orientation, disability or economic status, may become a member of Philly Cam. All members are required to pay an annual membership fee and agree to abide by Philly Cam's policies and procedures as outlined in Philly Cam's member handbook. And the key thing here is there's no concern about corporate censorship, direct or indirect. It's just putting the information out there. If you're curious about Philly Cam, simply go to phillycam.org and you'll get much more information. In about 8 or 9 minutes, we're going to get to Dana Carter. And I'm not going to spend time now on telling you about her. She's going to tell you herself. And let me just put it this way. If you haven't fastened your seat belts, please do so, because Dana Carter comes in with the heat, and it's all fact-based. She's an agitator, which is a great thing. Many people don't even know what an agitator is. An agitator is that device inside of your washing machine that spins around. And by spinning around, it's able to force the dirt off the clothes to the top so it can be washed away. But that's what educator, activist, agitator Dana Carter does. She exposes the dirt so that it can be washed away. So stay tuned with that. And let me just say this, and again, I'm going to talk more about what's going on in connection with this entire month of October, the PPM Fest. As I said at the very outset of the show, this program is part of Philly Cam's People Power Media Fest. That's the PPM Fest part, an annual month-long celebration right here, October 1, an annual month-long celebration of community media and Philly Cam's membership, with this year's focus on sharing the ways the media can be a form of community care. For more information, you can log on to ppmfest.org. And we talk about sharing ways the media can be a form of community care. I include in that community protest, community demonstration, because that's the only way that the have-nots will get some of what they deserve. That's the only way that the have-nots will get back from the haves what the haves took. And before you can take action, you have to know stuff. You can't just jump out there and take action and not know stuff. You got to know stuff. You got to do the research. You got to get the information. And once you're armed with the research, once you're armed with the information, then you can go out there and do stuff. When I say do stuff, I mean lawful stuff. I mean nonviolent stuff. I mean progressive stuff. I mean woke stuff. I mean revolutionary stuff. And that's exactly what we do here at Philly Cam. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about today before we get to our guest on the other topic is, what is it that we should know? What's the stuff that mainstream media is not sharing with us that we need to know more about and take action on? Well, I don't have enough time during today's show to give you all the details, but what you need to do is to go to the website of Project Censored. That's Project Censored. Just Google that. And each year, Project Censored will provide a list of the top 25 censored news stories, issues that affect the people on the street, grassroots folks, frontline folks. So here we are in 2021. So Project Censored already finished the top 25 censored news stories from 2019 to 2020. And then next year, they'll cover it from 2020 to 2021. So it's always a year back, because what Project Censored does is they look back and say, hey, what was important stuff that took place in the previous year that didn't get the attention it should have gotten? So I don't have time to give you Project Censored top 25, but just Google it. Project Censored top 25 news stories. And the most recent one would be 2019 to 2020, because right now they're still in the process of putting together a list of 2020 to 2021. But let me give you the top 5. And You should be as enraged as I am. And the only reason, I repeat, the only reason you know about this now is because of Philly Cam, is because of what we're trying to do with Philly Cam's People Power Media Fest. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that different hosts are going to talk about. But for me, an attorney who respects the U.S. Constitution, certainly the First Amendment, free speech, and all that good stuff, I want to provide the information that you all need. I want you to know that there's stuff that you need to be aware of so you can go and make change, because every time there's been change in this country, not just since 1776, but since 1619, August 25, with the birth of American slavery, every time there's been change for the masses, it resulted from the masses taking it to the streets. And again, I want to be clear, I'm not talking about violence and criminality. I'm talking about doing the kind of things that the civil rights activists did, do the kind of things that the revolutionaries from the 1960s and 70s did, taking it to the streets in order to make the stuff better for the people. But before you can do stuff, before you can take action, you must know stuff. So let me just spend the next 3 or 4 minutes in connection with Philly Cam's People Power Media Fest and my approach to this whole thing. My approach is that, hey, the best way for me, not others, because others would have a different approach just as effective, but for me, the most effective way of celebrating Philly Cam's annual People Power Media Fest is by arming people with information so that they can do something with it. And the doing something is make a change, make a revolution. So it's important that folks do that. And big shout out to Roland, as you see there on the screen, ppmfest.org for more information on workshops and special programming and much, much more. But again, in connection with me and this show, let me just tell you the top 5 censored news stories that you only hear about in venues and forums and media outlets like this, like here at Philly Cam. Number 5, it's called Inequality Kills. That the gap between the richest and the poorest Americans in this country is the widest gap in 50 years. Let me repeat that. The gap that exists now in America between the rich and the poor is the widest gap in the past 50 years. Why aren't people talking about that? Why aren't unions making noise and people taking it to the streets? This is like going back to the olden days where you have your upper class and you have your peasant class. How come the media hasn't told you that the number 5 of the top 5 censored stories in mainstream media is the inequality gap between rich and poor, the widest gap in the past 50 years? That's clearly newsworthy. But you don't hear it there, mainstream media, corporate media. You hear it, more important, you feel it here at Philly Cam. That's number 4. Number 5, the title of number 5 is Congressional Investments and Conflicts of Interest. In January 2020, the Center for Public Integrity and Vox reported that the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act wasn't a benefit for the public, for the masses. It was free money to the top 1%. Think about this. The people that you vote for to represent your interests go into Congress, pass this 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. But what they're doing is they're giving breaks to corporations that the congresspersons have interest in. So think about that. You're giving, let's say, the ABC Corporation a major tax break. But you're a stockholder, you're an investor. You might even be on the board of trustees of that group, board of directors. How come nobody's talking about that blatant contradiction, horrific contradiction? It's the kind of thing that people go to jail for. But the U.S. Congress, they're just doing it like it's no big deal. That's number 4 of the top 5 censored news stories as listed by Project Censored. Number 3, and I got to tell you, I didn't know about this, but when I read about it, I said, wow, it's pretty obvious. Did you know that the U.S. military is the worst contributor to the climate crisis in world history. Let me repeat that because that's not hyperbole. I'm not saying in the city, I'm not saying in the state, I'm not saying in the country, I'm not even saying on the planet. I'm saying in history that the US military is the largest polluter in the history of humankind. If that's not newsworthy, nothing is, but check it out. You didn't hear about that anywhere else. You heard about it here at Philly Cam. That's number 3. Number 2, and folks need to really delve into this because this is also shocking. Many of us know about that chemical corporation, Monsanto. Monsanto was actually purchased by the German pharmaceutical company called Bayer. Bayer aspirin, they mega giants. I mean, on a galactic level. Anyway, Bayer in 2018 purchased Monsanto. Monsanto created something called the Intelligence Fusion Center. It's a corporate, the best way to describe it is this. Imagine the CIA as a private corporation that does dirty tricks on journalists and activists. That's Monsanto's Intelligence Fusion Center. Their job is to attack journalists, woke journalists, and activists on the street, just to muddy the water so that they can get their corporate greed to do what it's been doing. You got to check out that story. But number 1, and then we're going to get to our guest of the day. Number 1, the most censored news story among the top 25 at Project Censored is missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. No disrespect to Gabby Petito and her family. But for every Gabby Petito, there's literally thousands of red women and brown women and black women. Let me give you this figure here, and then we're going to go to our guest and we're going to come back to PPM Fest. But let me just tell you this before we get to our guest. Nobody knows how many Indigenous women and girls are missing and murdered because the government doesn't give a damn. They don't even count. There's an organization called the Urban Indian Health Institute. Well, the Urban Indian Health Institute was able to do a tremendous job through its own investigation as recently as 5 years ago because it just didn't have the resources to continue. But as of 2016, they found out that in 1 year, there were 5,712 missing Indigenous women. 5,712 missing Indigenous red women in 1 year alone, 2016. And when they took their stats and their figures and their numbers to Department of Justice only had 116. So while the federal government is saying only 116 Indigenous women are missing, this group called the Urban Indian Health Institute was able to find out that there were 5,712. So when we talk about censored news, we're talking about this stuff. And when we talk about this stuff, and we're not restricted by corporate greed, by corporate constraints here at Philly Cam, we can talk about this. And we're going to talk more about it later. Let me just wrap up this segment, then we'll come back to it by saying this program is part of Philly Cam's People Power Media Fest, an annual month of October, month-long celebration of community media and Philly Cam's membership, with this year's focus on sharing the ways media can be a form of community care. And I would add to that, community protest. For more information, you can visit ppmfest.org. Having said that, let me get to the other topic that I said we were going to talk about today, because this is important. And it's going to be good for 2 reasons. 1, I can catch my breath and stop talking. And 2, there's going to be somebody else who's going to come up on the screen and do all the talking for the next 25, 30 minutes. But it's important stuff that you all need to know about. And that's my guest, Dana Carter. Now, you might say, well, I think I heard that name somewhere. It's creating a buzz on social media, but who is Dana Carter? Well, let me just read to you what I posted. I'm going to turn it over to her, and I'm going to be sitting here, but I'm going to be doing mostly listening because she has the information to share. And if you think I love to talk with good stuff, she certainly loves to talk with even better stuff. Here's what we posted on social media. Tune in to TV Courtroom. Provocative attorney Michael X covers the following. And the following was that first topic I talked about, PP, M-Fest, and we're going to come back to that later in the show. But in regard to our guest, this is what I posted. Quote, "You got to love the children to teach the children," unquote. It's an ongoing monthly segment featuring rabble-rousing agitator and skillful educator Dana Carter. And we have a beautiful picture of the beautiful young lady. And in the interest of full disclosure, as I mentioned in connection with my radio courtroom show, I know her. She's not only a good friend of mine, she's a relative of mine. She's my cousin. But don't hold that against her. Without further ado, rabble-rousing agitator and skillful educator Dana Carter. Dana, how are you today?
I am well. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. And I'm turning it over to you. You know how to do this TV radio thing. First, spend about 30 seconds letting people know that you have a resume of certifications in regard to what you're going to talk about. You didn't just Google something last night and get on social media the next morning acting like you're an expert. So, Dana, the microphone is yours. We're listening.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Court, for that introduction. I apologize if it's a bit of a lag or delay on your side. I hope I'm coming through clearly. My name is Dana Carter. This is my 20th year in education. I am a certified teacher in the state of Pennsylvania. I started my career with the School District of Philadelphia as a balanced literacy intern in 2001. So my training and my foundation is through literacy. I received my certification and master's degree from Arcadia University. I have a bachelor's in business administration from Delaware State University, and I'm a proud graduate of the Philadelphia High School for Girls. I'm from Mount Airy, came through Philly school. So, you know, I'm dedicated to this process and dedicated to making sure that School District of Philadelphia schools are effective for all learners. So it's my pleasure to be here with you all. All right, so this has been a crazy week. I feel like last week we started off with the children not being fed, and this week we're beginning with the announcement of the resignation of the superintendent of School District of Philadelphia schools.
And Dana, you got to give us the real deal with that, because it can't be what we're hearing from the media. It had to be something deeper than that. So please continue.
So, you know, there are always background stories that go on. So let me just kind of catch everybody up to speed if you haven't been paying attention to what's been going on in the media as it relates to the School District of Philadelphia. There have been a number of missteps with the reopening of the school year. For instance, waste management, and all these missteps kind of fall under the areas of School District of Philadelphia operations. So there have been issues with waste management, meaning there have been trash and dumpsters and children, and the trash has not been getting picked up in a timely manner. So children have to, and their families have to see all of this trash. You might have seen it on social media. There was another issue with the school buses not operating efficiently or effectively, leaving children where they weren't supposed to be left, not picking children up, 2 hours late, picking children up, not coming. So it was weird issues with school district operations. But the precipice, in my opinion, of the dysfunction is the food services issue. It doesn't matter what issues you have going on in your schools. You have to make sure that these children are fed. Philadelphia students qualify for Title I funding, which means that 80% of the children fall under the poverty level. Because of that, all children are eligible in the School District of Philadelphia for a free lunch, as determined by the federal government. So you have a school system that the federal government deems as needing Title I funding, meaning that they've reached the poverty level, or they are at the poverty level. And this school system has failed to properly establish a food service plan that feeds their children. So that came out this week or last week when a principal had to buy pizza for her students. And unfortunately, some of the pizzas didn't come in time, so some of the students didn't get fed. And if you have a school that is receiving federal funds and those children are going home and they're not getting fed, someone somewhere has to be accountable for that. So I am sure when that message got up to the higher ups, I'm talking about people not in Philly, people outside of Philly that are in charge of education, something had to happen. However, in my opinion, right, these are all my opinions, what the media did, or I should say what the school district did with the assistance of the media, was threw out a red herring, which was the resignation of Dr. Wilhelm Haidt. Now, why do I say that that is a red herring? Because most people knew that Dr. Haidt wasn't coming back anyway. That's number one. Dr. Haidt was resigning. His contract ends in August. Dr. Haidt wasn't renewing his contract. So for this to be marketed, if you will, as the school district having someone being held accountable for the debacle of the reopening, it is very misleading because he was leaving anyway, and that still leaves nobody being held accountable or nothing being done about the reopening that happened this school year. So I need for everybody to understand this is news, but it's not really, because he was leaving anyway.
Let me say this statement before you go on. You didn't know this, but this month, the month of October, here at Philly Can, we're doing something called People Power Media Fest, where we're putting out news that most folks don't know about, that major media doesn't cover. And that wasn't for you to talk about, but here you are going right into it as if we scripted it, but you're just doing your thing. Please continue.
Yeah, so I had no idea, but that is something that, people already knew. Dr. Haidt was already leaving. So things have been, I'm talking about for the past year, things have been in place with people having conversations about who the next superintendent will be. So for the media and the school district to say, or even for Dr. Haidt and the school board to come out with the message, the school board and Dr. Haidt have agreed to not renew his contract. He wasn't going to renew his contract. So it's weird that you all are duping the public like that, as if someone is being held accountable for the debacle or the crazy reopening that the school district of Philadelphia had. So that is my opening about the reopening. Yes, Dr. Haidt is leaving, but it definitely is a distraction from the issues. They are distracting you from the fact that there's still not an effective bus plan. They are distracting you from the fact that there is still not an effective food services plan. So please make sure that your children are eating. They are distracting you from the fact that they have paid $17 million for a waste management contract and extended that contract by $4 million this school year. And those individuals are not picking up trash at Philly schools. The city, the managing director of the city, Tumar, had to get the trash picked up at Philly schools. That's not his job. I mean, I'm grateful that he stepped up, but he's not getting paid for that. Those other people are getting paid for that. So that is something that needs to be addressed. And by them announcing that Dr. Haidt is leaving, I think that gives people a false sense of calm, like, oh yeah, they're really taking care of it. But the people who made this announcement are the same people in charge of rating Dr. Haidt, managing Dr. Haidt, and making sure that he's doing the right thing. And these individuals congratulated him for doing a great job. Meanwhile, they rated him as needs improvement in the area of academics last year. So if that's a great job, what's a poor job? If your great job is needing improvement in the area of academics and you're a superintendent, what does a poor superintendent look like in the eyes of the school board of Philadelphia? I'm not sure, but I sure wouldn't want one who needs improvement in academics leading my child. So let
me ask you this, Dana, before you go on, let me just jump right in and ask you, so what is it that a superintendent can do? I mean, because I always tell people we can dig Malcolm X up from the grave and make him president, but there are just restrictions that even a president can't overcome. How much better could a Haidt have been? How much can a new superintendent do to address and resolve the type of issues you've spoken about in just the past 10 minutes?
So something I had addressed at a previous show is that Philadelphia is an interesting place. It's a lot of politics that goes on, and someone who's not from Philadelphia, and they come into these systems trying to navigate and make it better. It is a daunting task, number one. Number two, that's a Black man, and he is coming to manage a district of 70% white teachers. I can also tell you, just as a little sidebar to that 99% of the administrators, 99% of the administrators who receive any disciplinary referrals are Black. The administrators are 50-50, white and Black. When I say administrators, I mean principals and assistant principals and those climate managers. 99% of those people who receive discipline referrals are Black. When they are split 50-50, Black and white, the issue, or this is just my assumption, as to why they are receiving so many discipline referrals is that the people that they are managing are, for the most part, white women. God bless y'all. But when you have that racial dynamic.
And I also want you to talk about, and you shared this on my radio show last week, that many of these white women who are teachers are married to Philadelphia police officers.
Not just Philadelphia police officers. I'm talking about those Rizzo-inspired cops that are in Roxborough, in South Philly, and up in the greater Northeast. Those individuals, I remember having a conversation. I'm not in the teachers group anymore because I don't have any patience for that, so I formed my own group. But I remember having a conversation with the teachers group, and they were having a conversation about a Philadelphia teacher who was arrested. And I had made a comment about just certain involvement that the FBI sometimes have in Black liberation movements. And the teacher said, my husband works for the FBI. They would never arrest anybody for just coming to the help for Black people. And I just told her to Google, like, COINTELPRO, like, but these people are so disconnected from the plight of Black people, and they're in these schools teaching these Black kids, right? So you kind of understand what's going on. So yes, a lot of these teachers, a lot of the white teachers are married to police officers. The Philadelphia Federation of Teachers, the PFT, and the FOP do not really operate differently when you think about how they both defend individuals that have historically caused harm to Black people. So I'm not saying that the police department in and of itself is racist, although I'm not saying that it isn't. And I'm not saying that the school system is racist, but both of these systems were not meant to support Black people. So the unions that they have support the individuals that uphold the origins of these two organizations, if that makes sense to the people that are listening. All right. So getting back to this whole superintendent search. So now we have this whole announcement. All right, Dr. Hyde is leaving. The school board that has shown historically that they don't want to hear from the public because they recently suppressed the speaker's minutes from 3 minutes to 2 minutes. They're the ones that are in charge of holding these conversations with the community to see who the next superintendent will be. But I want to finish your last question because I think I forgot. What can the superintendent do? The superintendent is limited. In my opinion, getting back to the FOP PFT thing, the superintendent is limited by the contract. So if there are certain things that the superintendent wants to push, and if the school board says no, or the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers said they don't approve it, then he can't, Dr. Hyde can't fire racist teachers because the PFT will support them. So I have had conversations with the equity committee and just different individuals that are involved in this process. And my one argument is that if a teacher is accused of being racist, or if a teacher is not following the COVID-19 protocols and is coming to school with the mask off and is not vaccinated and breathing in everybody's face, because of the PFT contract, this teacher is protected. So they might get removed from the school, but they're just going to go to another school and just be ineffective and miseducate somebody else's child because that is what the PFT contract states. It has to be an egregious, abusive individual in order to get fired from Philadelphia schools. And I'm telling you, I've been a teacher for 20 years. I have never seen a teacher removed. I've seen drunk teachers. I've seen abusive teachers. I've seen teachers curse out their administrators. I've never seen a teacher get fired because of the PFT contract. So that is a limitation to any superintendent. Anywhere that you go where you have people that are represented by a collective bargaining agreement is going to be a little bit of a barrier, which is why, in my opinion, the teachers union need to have a higher level of quality or expectations from their members. You can't continue to defend these people and you know they're not doing right by children. So that is
Dana, I'm so glad, Danny, you framed it that way because you and I are pro-union. I mean, the idea of forming a collective of workers against management ownership is key to proper functioning, but you can't defend the indefensible. You know, if the FOP, for example, sees Derek Chauvin choking the hell out of George Floyd, we're looking at it right there. Why are you raising money? Why are you filing a grievance for him? We can see what we see. And I love the fact that you made that connection between the PFT and the FOP. Please continue.
Yes, and I am a strong union supporter, of course, because you're going to have employers that take advantage of their employees. Yes. You definitely need the protection of a union, but I just want the union to do better by the children, because ultimately a teachers union, you know, where you're not there protecting people who are on the Tupperware line. No disrespect to people who are line workers, but I'm saying, like, if the teachers union, if a teacher messes up, This is not a Tupperware that's going to come out bent. This is somebody's child that's going to come out miseducated. So when you are defending these individuals, please understand that they are there because they potentially harmed a person. Most of the people who I see who are die hard, oh, Dana talking about the PFC, I don't want to listen to her today, are all white women. I promise you they're white women. When you start talking about union issues and how the union needs to be pulled to the carpet for certain things that they allow to happen, people are very uncomfortable with that. You're speaking against solidarity. Solidarity is a bullying tactic. Solidarity is what they say because they don't want you to speak out against the union. In my opinion, it's not too much different than organized religion in America. People just don't question it because if you question it, it means that you don't have faith. But we got to move beyond that, right? You should be able to question your leaders, and your leaders should be able to give you answers that make sense. So I just ask you, the PFC people, like if you want the advocates to be with you, you have to make sure that you're demanding more from your teachers and that you are holding your colleagues to a higher standard. I've been in the schools with y'all. I see what it is. So as long as you all defend that, whoever the superintendent, whatever superintendent comes, until that system gets straight, every superintendent is going to struggle because, like I have said before, everybody is pointing the finger at Dr. Height. Not that I absolved him for anything because heavy is the head that wears the crown, but Jerry Jordan has been a leader in Philadelphia way longer than Dr. Height. I'm talking about Jerry Jordan has been running the PFC since 2007, but he's been a member of the executive office since 1989. So that is the individual who is allowing these teachers to go up in these dirty schools and these toxic buildings, and then you have the nerve to sit with a teacher who's in the wheelchair because she has mesothelioma, talking about the school buildings are dirty. You were her union leader when you allowed her to go into that dirty building. Moving on. So
I gotta tell you, Dana, you're on fire exactly like I thought you would be. Please continue.
So that's my whole thing about Dr. Height. It's difficult for me to speak badly about an individual when I understand, or I have a little bit of an understanding as to all of the other issues that go into his job and why it might appear to be ineffective. What I don't like is that they serve the public a red herring for dinner as people were thirsty or hungry for a resolution to these school district issues. That is my issue with the school district. Saying that Dr. Height is resigning is not a proper response to the school district issues because he was already resigning. He's far from done though. Dr. Height is 60 years old, which is like the new 40. So I'm sure he is going to just, transfer into another position. What I said to Dr. Height before, because I've met with Dr. Height before, but what I said to him and whoever's in charge of him, I hope he takes this with him to his next position, is that before you start throwing people out of jobs, make sure they are properly supported. Before you start moving people from one area to the next, make sure that they are properly supported. And that is to someone who is my best friend or my worst enemy, because I don't want to see anybody without a job. And Dr. Height makes $324,000 a year, so he's not going to be hungry. But I'm saying, I like to make sure I give everybody the benefit of the doubt. And this is even for a man who I looked in his eyes, and I'm a little shaky as to, what I mean, who I was looking at. But even that person, I believe, deserves.
Those of you who just tuned in, you're listening to the fiery eloquence of Dana Carter. Who is Dana Carter? A rabble-rousing agitator and skillful educator. Although she looks like she's only 38, she claims she's been in this profession for 20 years. But I guess that means she started working at age 17 or 18. But she does a great job fighting for folks who need somebody to fight, specifically children. So, Dana, I'm listening to you, and it seems that the major complaints you're dealing with, you're not focused on Dr. Height leaving. You're focusing on 1, the bus situation, 2, food services, and 3, waste management. And before you tell us more about the issues, if folks want to get a hold of you, if they want to find out about the organization you're a part of, how do they get more info? How do they make contact?
You can look us up on Instagram, Racial Justice Philly. Our email is racialjusticephilly@gmail.com. You can look me up on Instagram Miss Carter 95. You can Google Dana Carter, advocate or activist, and I should pop up. I got a couple of things going on. I formed a committee to rename Philadelphia streets and schools because I feel like no child should have to go into any school named after a racist individual. The person at the top of my list, I mean, I have the whole design out for Benjamin Franklin to be Malcolm X High. I think I told you that. But yes. The other one is Samuel Gompers. Samuel Gompers was a labor leader, but he was also extremely racist. And the labor that he was leading is to keep white people in unions and to keep Asians and blacks out. So Samuel Gompers actually signed the Asian Exclusion Act, but there is a school in Overbrook named Samuel Gompers. So just to give you an idea of some of the other things I have going on, I like to research stuff like that. But
and by the way, Dana, I know there's some folks who say they don't do all that social media stuff and email stuff. So Dana is a proud member of my organization, ATTACK. So if you need to reach out to her by phone, call ATTACK. That's ATAC, Avenging the Ancestors Coalition. And we have an education committee. So if you want to reach Dana by phone, call 215. In fact, Roland's so thorough, our producer, he got the website up there. So go to that website, avengingtheancestors.com, or call us, 215-552-8751, 215-552-8751, and say, hey, I want to find out more about what Dana Carter is doing and what I can do to assist her. Again, that number, 215-552-8751, and just leave a message for Dana Carter, who heads our education committee, and she'll be happy to get back to you. Dana, we got about maybe 9-10 minutes left. It's all you.
Okay, great. I was just looking at the clock because I never pay attention to time. That's why I'm always over. I'm so sorry. All right. So now that we went over the fact that I feel like this resignation, daring, right? You know, when people give you a little bit of truth, but it really doesn't address the main issue. However, Dr. Haidt resigning is newsworthy, just not right now. They could have told us that in January because they are not going to have a new superintendent, so they say, until February, which I think is a horrible idea. I think this is too valuable or too critical of a position to rush it. So now the school board is having a whole lot of meetings, supposedly, in the community, 18 meetings in different areas of the community to try to get an idea of what the community wants. But this is the same school board that is, that doesn't want people to speak. So I don't know how receptive they're going to be to the individuals who are coming making recommendations. But even still, I would suggest you sign up. Make the school board be transparent. They actually held a secret meeting yesterday about transparency in the school board selection process. I mean, in the superintendent selection process via a secret meeting. But make the school board members make them be accountable and make them be transparent. Next up on my discussion is the structure. So moving forward, once the school board of Philadelphia gets a committee, they are going to form a search committee to see who will be the next superintendent of Philadelphia. This search committee is going to consist of 11 individuals, 1 teacher, 1 principal, two students, community leaders, 1 person from organized labor, an advocacy group, someone from business, and somebody from higher ed, and someone from charter schools. Please make sure that these representatives are people who you feel like have the best interests of Philadelphia students in mind. The last search committee was led by the provost of the University of Pennsylvania. My issue with that is that there are a lot of contracts that the School District of Philadelphia gets. There are a lot of PEN contracts that come in front of the school board that are passed. I believe it's a conflict of interest. I'm sure somebody could look into the legalities beyond that. And there are also members who are on the search committee, at least one, who is the owner of a business who gets major school district contracts. I don't understand how this individual gets school district contracts when he literally is the person who picked the school district members. So just make sure you're doing research in terms of the people who make up the search committee to make sure they don't have any alliances to anyone who doesn't have the best interest of children in mind. There's a whole lot of weird stuff going on in Philly. All right, so another thing I would like to add, just in when you talk about accountability in the message, is that Dr. Height staying to 2022 means that he is going to get his pension. If Dr. Height was removed from his, if Dr. Height was removed as superintendent, he wouldn't make 10 years. So he's staying until August 22. I'm not saying he's staying because he wants to make pension. I'm saying that him staying until August 22 guarantees that he will receive a pension from the state of Pennsylvania. So if they were to remove him from his position now, as it appears, people think that he was removed, he wouldn't get his pension. But that's not happening. Just to go on back to the whole point of the red herring, no one is being held accountable for this debacle of a school district of Philadelphia reopening. Dr. Height, since he's been here, Dr. Height gets a lot of praise, and I'm not saying that he's not deserving of it. But one major issue that I have is the school closures. Dr. Height closed 10% of school district of Philadelphia schools since he's been here. Those were 23 schools. And so when I looked at the Pew Research released a study last year, and I compared that study to the school district of Philadelphia data, one interesting data point that I came up with is that when school district of Philadelphia high school students, when their attendance increased, so did the violence in the city in that age group. And the reason, I am sure, is due to the fact that they have school closures. So these children have to travel across multiple neighborhoods to get to school instead of going to school in their neighborhood school prior to the Height era. I am a teacher who has been here since 2001. I left to go to another country in 2013, and that was in the beginning of Dr. Height's career. When I came back to the school district of Philadelphia, it was 2016. That was in the midst of the Height era, and it was pure pandemonium. That is the only thing I can compare it to. When I left, it was pretty stable. It was 2013, right after he came, and when I came, it was 2016. I'm not sure what happened, but there was a lack of focus on school district of Philadelphia schools. And I can tell you that because when I left, the teachers were making, and when I came back, they still didn't have a contract. So another thing that Dr. Height is praised for is for getting the school district of Philadelphia out of a deficit, out of financial struggles. But what people aren't telling you is that he held on to the teacher's contract for 5 years, so they didn't get a raise. 5 of his 10 years, the teachers had no contract. So yes, he probably did assist in getting the school district extra money, but he did that because the teachers weren't getting paid. They were getting paid. They weren't getting their raises for 5 years. And when they got their new contract, that pay wasn't retro. That's your union leader. Wow. All right. So I just have some recommendations. I always like to give people some solutions.
Excellent.
Here are my recommendations for my last few minutes. How can we make the school district of Philadelphia better? And I'm so sorry I have to wipe my nose, but I have horrible allergies. First, Mr. Hackney, Otis Hackney, is the chief education officer for the mayor's office of education. I believe Otis is a great person. Otis, you need to get into those schools. So Otis Hackney, I believe, should take over the school district of Philadelphia while Dr. Height is making his exit. Otis could be the little interim, get somebody in there to stabilize school district of Philadelphia schools. I think the school district of Philadelphia needs to stop all new initiatives, new contracts, and new curriculum. And everybody that's working in 440 with a certification needs to go back into school district buildings to stabilize the schools. The reasons that these high school students are having so many behavioral issues and fights is, number one, they don't have recess. Number two, it's an extreme lack of staffing in the schools. So you can't be in 440 eating crimpets and drinking tea while these school level administrators are struggling, and y'all both have the same certification. Most people in 440 have principal certifications in addition to teacher certifications. You all can go in and help out your colleagues. I believe that is a critical next step in order to get the school stabilized, especially with the announcement that Dr. Height is resigning. It's just going to be some weird stuff coming. So I believe the schools need more people in the building. I believe that elected officials need to have office hours in school district of Philadelphia schools. Your people are telling you how toxic these buildings are, and they're telling you that you need help. Spend 1, 2, 3 days a month going into school district buildings, set up in classroom 114, and have conversations with just constituents about the issues they are facing as it relates to school district of Philadelphia schools. There are a lot of elected officials around here who are trying to put their bids in for 2023 and beyond, right? If you want to do that, go up into the school buildings, because I'm going to make these parents and community leaders hold these elected officials accountable. I believe that you need to remove all current school board members from the selection process for the next superintendent. These are the individuals who rated and manage, I should say, the mayor manages the superintendent. The school board rates him, but I don't believe that they did anything to support the students of Philadelphia for these past few years. So I don't believe that they actually have earned the right to pick the next superintendent. So I believe that the school board members should be removed from the process, and it should be replaced with individuals that are given, that are recommended by the Mayor's Office of Education and the Pennsylvania Secretary of Education, along with the advocacy groups that you see out here in Philadelphia. There was a secret meeting yesterday about transparency. And in that secret meeting, no one who was a vocal opponent of the school board or Dr. Hite was invited. So I just don't want them to send out the invites to a whole lot of yes men. I want to make sure that people are going to be there to challenge the process, and just the history of the people who are in the school board now. It doesn't make me comfortable that this process will be fully transparent. So those are my recommendations.
Well, I really appreciate you laying out the problems and offering solutions. There's so much I want to say to you, but we've run out of time. But folks who want to hear the follow-up, Dana Carter, local agitator, local educator, is on my radio courtroom show on WURD 96.1 FM every Sunday at 11 a.m. And once again, thanks to our producer extraordinaire, Roland. You see it on the screen. So if you want to hear more from Dana Carter, check out WURD 96.1 FM every Sunday at 11 a.m. Dana, I know you're not a lawyer, but you played one on TV because you started your whole thing by saying that what you're about to share is your opinion. So by you laying that out the outset, there's no defamation lawsuit, there's no slander lawsuit. Great job at your Harvard Knight Law School class, because you learned a lot. Also on Sunday, I want you to talk more about the suppressed speaker approach, where people are being shut off in mid-sentence and having other people talk over them. I want you to talk more about the racial justice Philly. Dana, we got to run, but thank you very much. And we look forward to having you back next month to continue to talk about what it takes. As you framed it, you got to love the children to teach the children. Dana Carter, thank you very much. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Be safe.
All right. And folks, in our final approximately 5 minutes, let me jump back to how we started today's show. I wanted folks to know that today's program is part of Philly Cam's People Power Media Fest. What's that? It's an annual month-long, the month of October, annual month-long celebration of community media and Philly Cam's membership, with this year's focus on sharing the ways media can be a form of community care. And by community care, I interpret that to mean everything: community activism, protest, demonstration, wokeness, progressive attitude, all that good stuff to move us forward. And those of you who want more information, you can get it easily. Just log on to ppmfest.org. That's peoplepowermediafest.org. Once again, the letters ppmfest.org. And once again, Roland, thank you very much for posting that on the screen so folks can see it. And by the way, I don't want you to think that it's just me doing this thing from 3:30 to 4:30 and that's the end of it. This is a month-long celebration of community media as community care, with a mix of workshops and screenings and panels and free in-person and virtual events. Once again, just go to the PPM Fest website to plan the experiences that will enlighten and entertain you. In my final 2 minutes, I talked about how, from my standpoint as a lawyer, as a civil libertarian, as a member of the ACLU, it's all about free speech. But if people are going to speak, folks should be able to listen. And those who are able to listen should be getting the right information. But corporate media doesn't provide that. But on segments like this and shows like this and broadcast platforms like this, and by this I mean phillycam.org, you find out stuff like the top 25 censored news stories throughout America. And again, we don't have enough time to go through all 25, but let me just tell you, you need to go to projectcensored.org and see what's really newsworthy that's not being reported by corporate media. And that's why I love Philly Cam, because we're not constrained or restrained by corporate donations. We say what needs to be said when it needs to be said. For example, the top 5 censored news reports from the last time it was done, that was 2019, 2020. Right now, this group, Project Censored, is working on 2020 to 2021. But for 2019 to 2020, here they are. Number 5, inequality kills. The gap between the richest Americans and the poorest Americans is the largest it's been in 50 years. Think about that. In 50 years, that's half of a century. Number 4, the congressional investments in conflict of interest, that congresspersons are voting on issues that line their own pocket. That should be talked about. Number 3, U.S. military is the largest contributor to the climate crisis, not just in Philly, not just in Pennsylvania, not just in the U.S., not just on the planet, but in history. U.S. military, that's number 3. Number 4, Monsanto. Monsanto has its own kind of CIA group, where imagine a private corporation with the investigative powers of a CIA and FBI. That's Monsanto's intelligence center. They actually were purchased by Bayer Pharmaceutical Company back in 2008. And what they've done is to create an intelligence fusion center to monitor and discredit journalists and activists. How come folks are not talking about it? Well, we are here at Philly Cam because we can. And the number 1 censored news story is missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. No disrespect to Gabby Petito and her family, but dozens and hundreds and thousands. When I say thousands, that's no hyperbole. The group called Urban Indian Health Institute reported that in 1 year alone, 2016, 5,712 Indigenous women and girls went missing. And when this group, the Urban Indian Health Institute, took these numbers to the Department of Justice to match up the figures, the Department of Justice only had 116. Think about that. There are over 5,700 Indigenous women and girls missing in that 1 year alone, 2016, but the federal government only had records on 116. They don't give a damn, but we give a damn here at Philly Cam. That's where we talk about this stuff. So again, folks, please, it's not just about the show right now in this segment, but check out Philly Cam for the entire month. I'm going to end today's show like I end every show. It goes like this. Think Black, I'm out.